Okay, Senator Carson, we are live on YouTube and we have attendees here.
Okay, terrific. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Sharon Carson from District 14. Today, we will be holding a meeting of the Senate Executive Committee on Executive Departments and Administration. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the Right to Know law. As chair of the Senate Committee on Executive Departments and Administration, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that 1, we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selective staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. 2, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. 3, we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remote.senate@leg.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. 4, in the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. 5, please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And number 6, finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. I will call the roll. Senator Reagan?
Senator Reagan, I'm in my office in Deerfield by myself.
Senator Ricciardi?
Good morning. I'm in my home in Bedford in the room alone, but my husband is in the house.
Okay. Senator Kavanaugh?
Hello, Kevin Kavanaugh. I'm in my home in Manchester, and I am in the room alone, and my wife is in the house.
Senator Prentice?
Senator Prentice, home in West Lebanon, New Hampshire, alone in the room, husband in the house.
Okay, and Senator Carson, good morning. I'm Senator Carson. I am at my home in Londonderry, and I am alone in the room, but my daughter is in the house. Okay, so now that we've gotten that done, we also have on with us this morning Mr. Cameron Lapine and Mr. Patrick Murphy. So let's get started. We're going to go and open the public hearing on the first bill we have scheduled this morning, which is Senate Bill 55, and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Abard.
Okay, Senator, if you could just unmute.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Great. I know that there's going to be a number of people wanting to speak on this. So basically, I'll just read my testimony if I could, and I'll leave the questions to those that are signed up to speak. I see that there's at least 10 or 11. And so thank you for the opportunity this morning. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today on SB 55, a measure which will preserve today's practice of how we do construction and contracting for government and government-assisted work in New Hampshire. This bill provides that the government shall neither require nor prohibit participation in project labor agreements as a condition of participating in a government construction project. It leaves that decision appropriately with the contractor. Briefly, a project labor agreement requires companies to agree to recognize unions as the representatives of their employees on that job, use union hiring halls to obtain most of those workers, obtain apprentices exclusively from union apprenticeship programs, follow union work rules and pay into the union benefits and multiple employer pension plans that any non-union employees permitted on the project will unlikely to access unless they join the union or they're vested in these plans. In New Hampshire, over 95% of the workforce chooses not to belong to a union, severely limiting the workforce available to contractors and unfairly penalizing and limiting the opportunity for non-union contract workers. This legislation simply makes it sure that the government cannot mandate or prohibit the use of project labor agreements as a condition for awarding publicly funded projects. The bill in no way limits the ability for a construction firm to utilize project labor agreements if they believe it will aid them in getting qualified laborers. SB 55 is fair, it maintains a level playing field, and will ensure cost-effective, accountable, and prudent government spending and investment in the Granite State. By keeping our projects free from government-mandated special interest agreements, such as anti-competitive and cost project labor agreements, taxpayers win. This legislation leaves contractors with the decision on how to perform the work with their labor force. That means union contractors can use their unionized workers and agreements, but also open shop contractors can continue to rely on their craft workers as well. The bottom line, finally, is that this legislation ensures government is not choosing winners or losers, but rather maintains neutral, allowing equal access to employee opportunities. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today, and with any particular questions to those that are following up that can speak a little bit more acutely to this. So thank you very much, committee members.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. Senator, are there any questions from the committee? Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Senator Carson, and good morning, Senator Avard. Thank you for your testimony. I may have missed this, so I just want to clarify. Is there a requirement for this now? Is there a requirement for these project labor agreements now? Has there been an issue or?
The open shops have asked me to file this bill because apparently there might have been in the past. And so I'll leave that up to them as to why they feel as though this is a necessary bill, if I could. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Senator Avard.
Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any further questions? Senator, I have a question, and in the bill, you use the word government. When you're talking about government, are you talking about just state government or local government, or all government? Because I think you know as well as I do, we have no say-so over federal contracts.
It is my understanding it is the state government.
So we're not talking about municipal government either.
That is my understanding.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, committee. Madam Chair.
Let's see who. Okay. Next, we're going to go to. I'm sorry, I'm looking at this on my phone. I got to get rid of this because I can't see it. Greg Moore.
Sorry, I'm just looking for Greg Moore on the list.
Oh, he's not testifying. Okay, sorry. Because I have to go back and forth. Paul Grenier.
Okay, Paul, if you could just unmute and introduce yourself for the record, please.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. Could you
My name is Paul Grenier, and I reside at 492 Champlain Street in Berlin, New Hampshire. I currently serve in my 6th consecutive term as mayor of the city of Berlin, and I'm also on my 7th term as Coos County Commissioner. I've pre-filed my testimony with Mr. Lapine, so you shall all have my written testimony. So I'll be very brief. I will give you 3 examples of construction projects that happened in the Berlin-Gorham area from 2007 to 2012. The first construction project was the Walmart Supercenter store that was built in Gorham. They came to Gorham with not only out-of-state workers, but out-of-country workers. And there was at least 2 occasions where immigration and/or Gorham police had to arrest workers because they were undocumented illegals. So we had it, and not one local person was hired to do work on that project. The second example that I want to give to you is the project that built the federal prison. That was not a PLA project, and it was the contract was Bell Heery. The vast majority of the employees who worked on that project were from out of state. There was a good number of employees from Coos County who actually worked on that project. But after the project was done, so was the effect on the community. And the third project that I want to bring to you is the Burgess Biopower plant construction that began in 2010. That was a project labor agreement job between the New Hampshire Building Trades Council and the developer. I actually had the ability to sit down with a meeting with then President Joe Casey and the owner of the project. And we worked out a nice agreement where the New Hampshire Building Trades Council actually put together an apprenticeship program for all of the kids in this area who wanted to work. And as you know, the North Country's been hit quite hard by, economic problems since the closing of the mills. And back then we had probably 30 or 40 kids working on that project under an apprenticeship program in the building trades. And many of them are still in the building trades today and are still living in Berlin. So the examples to you might seem extreme, but there's been a long residual positive outcome from a project that was done by a project labor agreement here in Berlin. So I strongly urge you to kill Senate Bill 55 and simply allow what's been going on. Let it happen. Let it keep happening. There's no reason for government to interfere in a process that's been working great. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Next, we're going to go to Josh Reap.
Okay, Josh, if you could just unmute and identify yourself for the record.
Sure. Am I coming through?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Joshua Reap from Manchester, New Hampshire, and I am the president and CEO of Associated Builders and Contractors, New Hampshire, Vermont chapter. And I want to say good morning to Chairwoman and members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing today. The ABC is a trade association representing more than 250 members from the construction and construction-related firms here in New Hampshire. We're founded on something called the merit shop philosophy, in which ABC helps its members develop people, win work, deliver that work safely, ethically, and profitably for the betterment of our communities in which we live and work, because we are very much a part of this community as anyone else is on this hearing today. Our members have literally built the schools, churches, hotels, hospital buildings, and manufacturing facilities that support our communities in every moment. They build the structures that we use to work, play, heal, and learn in. Our diverse membership of both small businesses and large general contractors is bound by a shared commitment of the merit philosophy, which is based on the principles of non-discrimination due to labor affiliation and being awarded the construction contracts through open, competitive bidding based on quality, safety, and value. Today, I appear before you to speak in support of Senate Bill SB 55. This legislation provides that the government shall not require nor prohibit participation in the Project Labor Agreement, or PLA for short, as a condition of participating in government construction projects. The legislation ensures neutrality by leaving that decision whether or not to use a PLA to the private parties involved in the project. The legislation ensures union and open shop, or as we like to say, merit shop contractors, have equal footing when bidding on public work. By way of a brief background, government mandated PLA is a pre-hire condition that requires contracts to be entered into a collective bargaining agreement with one or more labor unions as a condition of being allowed to perform work on that project. Under this agreement in the PLA, that is, labor unions agree not to strike or walk off the job in exchange for full representation of workers and imposing certain conditions that favor the union work rules. Just some typical examples of what a PLA does. It requires a worker to join or recognize the union as a sole and exclusive bargaining agents for all construction employees. Requires merit shop contractors to hire one or more or all of their employees through the union instead of using their existing local workforce. It requires merit shop contractors to make contributions to union pension plans which non-union employees will never benefit from unless they join the union. Almost all PLAs include key provisions that discourage merit shop contractors not affiliated with the union from competing with taxpayer-funded construction projects. An all-important point, New Hampshire's construction workforce, some estimates, is above 90% open shop, meaning PLAs dramatically limit workforce available to contractors, leaving the vast majority of New Hampshire's construction workforce benched. These are hardworking non-union employees that are fairly left out in the cold. Let me give you an example of how costly government mandated PLAs can be. In Manchester in 2012, the U.S. Department of Labor imposed a project labor agreement on its Job Corps Center in Manchester. Under the PLA, the project attracted only 3 bidders from out of state. All bids ranged from 38 million up to almost 41 million. The DOL scrapped the PLA and put the project back out to bid under fair and open competition. Without a project labor agreement, the project attracted 9 bidders, with the lowest bid from a New Hampshire contractor submitting a price of 31 million, saving the taxpayers 6 million, which has led to on-time, on-budget delivery in the fall of 2015. I will also note that OSHA had come onto the job site multiple times and had remarked that it was one of the best run, safest job sites they had ever seen. SB 55 learns from this mistake by prohibiting wasteful exercise of even entertaining government-mandated PLAs. With the incoming federal administration, we're sure to see more of these attempts at government-mandated PLAs. But with SB 55, we can protect our local workforce and our hard-earned taxpayer dollars from these one-size-fit-all government-mandated blunders. Please vote on SB 55 with ought to pass. Doing so will protect the New Hampshire advantage of construction and prevent government from picking winners and losers. SB 55 protects the interests of taxpayers and provides more opportunity to all contractors bidding on public work projects. That's my formal comments, which I'll submit over email, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Reep. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, Mr. Reep, I just want to get some clarification here because, it's a question I asked Senator Avard. Government, the word government is in here, and I think there needs to be some clarification. It says here, this means the state, a political subdivision, or any agency or spending unit thereof. And I'm concerned that we are talking about, when you say a political subdivision, you're talking about municipalities, and whether or not we should be telling the municipalities or even the counties how to contract for construction. But also it says here, or any agency or spending unit thereof. And the example that you gave us was a federal contract. It was a federal project, and they have their own set of priorities. And how do you see us interfering within that federal contract?
Sure. I use that as an example because while PLAs don't often come up in New Hampshire, they do from time to time come in and entertain in conversations on a local as well as a state level and conversations with decision makers. And our concern is having someone at a desk in a state agency make the decision of telling a contractor how to manage the job site can be concerning, and that's what causes a lot of added costs and inefficiencies to the project. Under this bill, it would ensure that the way we do work now would continue, which is leaving the decision to use a project labor agreement up to the private parties that offer a bid to the contractor. I'm sorry, to the state.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony this morning.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
The chair will call Cordell Johnston.
Cordell, if you could unmute and announce yourself for the record.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Cordell Johnston, Government Affairs Counsel for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And we oppose this bill as it's drafted for the reason that Senator Carson has already indicated. We believe if the state wants to impose this kind of restriction on itself, that's fine. That's a policy decision for the legislature to make. But the bill does apply as it's written to municipalities. Senator Avard said he understood that it does not, and maybe it was his intent that it not apply to municipalities, but as drafted, it applies to governmental entities which are defined as the state, a political subdivision, or any agency or spending unit thereof. And political subdivision is definitely any city or town. And our position is simply that contracting practices should be left to the municipalities. That's something that has always been a matter of local control. And just to be clear, our position on this has been consistent, regardless of which direction the regulation is coming from. Over the years, we've seen bills from both directions trying to limit municipal contracting practices. For example, 2 years ago, there was a bill that would have required any company performing a public works project to guarantee certain levels of wages and benefits. And that bill would have prohibited municipalities from contracting with a company that didn't guarantee those wages and benefits. And we were on the side of the contractors then opposing that because it interfered with local control. So this bill is more or less the opposite of that, and we oppose it for the same reason. I don't know of any city or town in New Hampshire that does this currently or is proposing to do this. I don't really think it is a practical issue, an issue as a practical matter, but just as a principle, a matter of principle, we think these decisions should be left to the municipalities. Again, if it is certainly up to the legislature to make that decision for itself at the state level, but please let cities and towns make the decisions for themselves. If the bill simply removed any reference to municipalities, we would have no issue with it. And that's the extent of my testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Johnston. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to call Holly Novoletsky.
I'm just not seeing the name. If they could raise their hand, that would be helpful.
I received an email a little while ago. Holly is going to be replaced by Tom Henney, who's from the same company.
Okay, all right, well, let's call Mr. Henney. I thought it was the other way around, that she was replacing him. Not a problem.
It looks like Tom's raised his hand.
Okay.
Okay.
Tom, if you could unmute and just announce yourself for the record, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. Okay, first and foremost, I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to speak on this important matter. My name is Tom Heaney. I'm the Executive Vice President of Novel Ironworks, Inc., and I'm here to express my support for SB 55. By way of background, our company employs over 100 people, and we've been in business for 65 years. We're a leading metal fabrication and structural steel company that has erected over 500 steel structures ranging in size from 50 ton to 5,000 ton. In the past decade alone, we've built over 50 medical facilities and 40 schools of various sizes. Our main office is in Greenland, New Hampshire, and we service all of New England. As a responsible contractor, we safely build on time, on budget, using local workers and pay competitive wages, along with providing a full complement of benefits. Our employees are like family to us, and many spend their entire careers with our company. That's because we're committed to our people through a focus on safety and training. Besides the in-house training, we also work within the local community colleges to enhance the skills of our teammates. We believe, and we are proud to say, that we provide many Granite State families with the hope and opportunity that comes with working for an employer that is based here in the community. I support SB 55 because it demonstrates and exemplifies the manner in which New Hampshire companies conduct business in the construction industry. While a fair share of our work is in the private sector, we do bid public work and are proud of the quality of workmanship that goes into the product we provide taxpayers. Our projects are built to last and done so with accountability to the awarding authorities and ultimately the taxpayers. So for us, we do not bid on projects that are subject to a government mandated project labor agreement, as it would require us to recognize third-party union labor halls as representatives of our employees on that job. Our employees don't belong to nor need a third party to work or direct our company in order to provide the best possible product at a fair and reasonable price. So again, based upon the fact that it would put our company, along with all of the other open shop companies, in an untenable position, we would elect not to bid on those projects. As the majority of the companies in New Hampshire are actually open shop or non-union, most likely there would be few, if any, in-state bidders on projects. This naturally would lead to much higher prices at the expense of taxpayers. So in order to avoid this scenario, it would make sense to support SB 55. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Heaney. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Again, thank you very much for your testimony this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Next, we're going to call Doug Knott.
Okay, Doug, if you could unmute and announce yourself for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Doug Knott from Knott's Land Care, landscape company located in Amherst, New Hampshire. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. I'm testifying to support the voting for this particular bill. Just a little background is we have the landscape company we started in 2004, and we provide landscape maintenance, design builds, and snow and ice management services. We do that for private and municipalities. Overall, for us, we prefer to not have government mandating how construction companies compete. This affects us when we mostly work for a general contractor for a landscape install, or might have possibly affected us, for example, when we did a partial reforestation project for the airport out in Keene a few years back. But to us, the legislation voting for the legislation would protect the fair competition and keep the decision on how to work together with the contracted parties. Overall, the PLAs seem to be sort of a corrupt bidding process because costs are added and a lot of companies get shut out. Has been testified earlier with that work labor force job in Manchester. There was only 3 companies that bid when they were using a PLA. So it really limits competition, which in short limits the benefit to the people of the state of New Hampshire because they may pay more money for a project that they don't need to. That added layer also removes accountability, puts the quality of work into question as well. So if you support SB 55, it's a bill that will ensure accountability and oversight and help contractors deliver the quality of work that citizens of New Hampshire deserve. So I encourage you to pass SB 55 for the benefit of the contractors and the citizens of our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Knott. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Knott.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, next we're going to call Gary Thomas.
Okay, Gary, if you could unmute and announce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Gary. Oh, did I unmute?
No,
you hear
you're
me?
fine. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Gary Thomas, and I'm the president of North Point Construction Management. North Point's been providing design and construction services for all types of projects throughout New Hampshire and Massachusetts, given the fact that we're in southern New Hampshire. We're very proud to have been completed and satisfied a variety of needs, including municipal buildings, schools, high-tech, a lot of high-tech and industrial facilities. And I'm here to voice my support for SB 55. By supporting the bill, you're supporting local companies with local workforces. And I can tell you that by passing SB 55, you're letting the construction industry know and understand that supports getting more work done with limited tax dollars we have available. Each employer who bids on a job has to meet certain standards, and North Point being one of them. We all hire very good, comparable employees. Much like Novell mentioned, we have many employees that have been with us for 20 plus years. We have 401k, we have a very solid health insurance, and having performed work in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, I can tell you, Granite State Public Works System has a very good process for vetting these contractors. By passing the SB 55, we make sure that disruptive mandates like project labor agreements will not be a factor on our projects. I've always believed that it is up to the contractor to figure out how to best negotiate labor work rules and to get the job done with quality and built to last. When I look at other states that do allow government mandated PLAs, I see more expensive bids, less bidders, and the way the bill is written, the state leaves the right to use or not to use a project labor agreement with the contractors. Live free and build is the right approach. And thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Thomas. Are there any questions from the committee?
Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Next, we have Joel Pickering.
Okay, Joel, if you could unmute and announce yourself for the record, please.
Hi there, folks. Assuming you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Joel Pickering. I am the president of Denron Plumbing and HVAC. We're located in Manchester, New Hampshire. Our company has been around since 1974. We have approximately 150 employees. Those range from licensed plumbers, journeyman plumbers, apprentice plumbers, service technicians, project managers, and all the support staff that goes along with delivering decent projects to our clients. We've done a fair amount of private work and public work. And I can tell you that I am supporting SB 55 and would ask you to do the same. As some of the previous testimonies had mentioned to Mr. Haney and Mr. Thomas, I believe that the government should not be involved in mandating a project labor agreement, that the best course of action is to let the contractors decide what labor forces they're going to use to complete the work. Our people, same as these other guys have mentioned, our people have been with us, a lot of us, a long time, 30, 40 years. I've been with the company 17 years, and we have many local folks that have been with us, and even second generation people now that have been with us. And project labor agreements discourage us from bidding on public work. It tends to drive the cost of projects up, and it doesn't do a benefit to our companies and to our workers. So I'm here to, again, just to voice my support for SB 55 today. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pickering. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Again, thank you. Next, we're going to call Ed Kozlowski.
Ed, could you raise your hand for me? Sorry, I'm just not seeing Ed on the list.
Okay, we'll move on. Kyle Reagan.
Okay, Kyle, if you could unmute and announce yourself for the record.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Kyle Reagan. I'm a resident of Amherst, New Hampshire, and the owner of Deco, a merit shop contractor based in Brookline, New Hampshire. Over 200 employees, most live in New Hampshire, and we work across New England. Our average years of service for our company is over 18 years. We're also proud of our construction safety record with an EMR rating below 0.8. The average is 1.0. We also offer a benefit package that includes things like 401k, paid training, as well as unlimited vacation time. So we care about our employees. We operate our own federally approved apprentice program, where we train and develop a merit shop labor force. I will say pretty quickly, we support any bill that works to promote a fair and open competitive construction marketplace. SB 55 does just that. So I would encourage everybody to please support SB 55. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Reagan, for your testimony. Next, we're going to call David Pelletier.
David, if you could unmute and announce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Pelletier. I live in Dunbarton, New Hampshire. I am the business manager of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 131, and I wanted to speak in opposition of Senate Bill 55. So briefly, in my 20 years in leadership of this local and working around the state here, we've never seen a state bid that included a project labor agreement in any government construction contract. New Hampshire current has historically awarded contracts to the lowest qualified bidder. And I suggest that the current system supports fair and open competition. And with all the pressing needs facing the state right now, with unemployment and small businesses struggling, this pandemic, you know, why are we entertaining this kind of legislation that seems to have no benefit to the state or to the people of New Hampshire? So I'd ask that you find Senate Bill 55 inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Pelletier. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Cam, do we have any other folks who have signed up to speak? Do you know?
I do not. If anyone does want to speak, they should raise their hands. We have a couple of hands raised.
Okay, all right. Just please remind them to identify themselves for the record.
Okay. Gary Abbott, if you could unmute and announce yourself for the record, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Chairman Carson and Senators. For the record, my name is Gary Abbott. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Associated General Contractors of New Hampshire. I have been in charge of the association for over 30 years and have dealt with many issues dealing with construction in New Hampshire. I raise this because we have always been in support of fair and open competition. And I know we provided the committee ahead of time with our position paper. We also provided a white paper on the history of the PLAs, just so the committee would have that information. That was produced by the AGC of America. What I want to present to you today, that this bill for us is a very easy lifting in the sense that it's easy to support this bill. With 95%, now I represent contractors that are both open shop and union. So this is definitely where 95% of the current marketplace in New Hampshire is open shop. Now this has come up twice in the past few years. One with the Job Corps Center that you've already heard about. Another was in Portsmouth, a wastewater treatment plant was proposed to include a PLA. And I can tell you, I wrote papers to both projects opposing the use of PLAs. Now, we have not had that instance for the state projects, but in 25 other states, you already have this kind of language in the state statutes that makes it clear for state agencies, government entities that use public funding for projects. So I know there was some discussion earlier by Cordell Johnson and Senator Carson regarding whether it happens in municipalities. Well, we support this language for both because it is a practice that could permeate to others. Now, it will be up to the committee to decide whether it's just state funding that's affected or municipal funding. But in either case, this is good legislation to set as a standard for New Hampshire, that you don't want somebody putting in a project labor agreement that basically gives preferential treatment to one segment of the market. I, like Cordell, fight for free competitive bidding and open competition across the state. We also don't encourage, and I know this was part of a previous testimony, this is not about residency requirements. This is not about those kind of things. This is also not about the qualifications of the contractor. There are already in place pre-qualification methods as well as bonding requirements that ensure communities or the state or the federal government that they get a great project that's backed by insurance. So we're already covered to protect all of the government agencies regarding a quality project. This just makes sure that we don't put in standards that favor one segment of the industry over the other. So with that, I would ask for the committee to support Senate Bill 55, and I would take any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions for Mr. Abbott from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Abbott.
Thank you.
Next, we have Bob Clegg. If you could just unmute yourself and announce yourself for the record, please.
For the record, my name is Robert Clegg. I'm in Hudson. And just for the record, I've been 51 years now in the construction trades. So I guess I have almost as much time in it as Gary Abbott and a few others who I've worked with over the years. I'm opposed to the bill. Maybe my years as a state legislator has me reading things the way I think others would. I believe, I'm not a union contractor, but I believe that the agreements that I use on my job sites would put me in jeopardy if I was getting tax credits or tax abatements, because I do demand people do certain things. I don't allow people to bring in immigrant workers and pay them less just because they can. I force everybody to pay a decent wage on the job. I don't care. That's just the way it is. I make people treat people on the job the way I always wanted to be treated over all these years. Now, my biggest competitor was always the guy who bid low and never paid for the material he used on the job site. So when it comes to favoritism, yeah, the low guy gets the favoritism, and it doesn't matter whether he's got insurance or not. One of the biggest problems we had when I was there was looking at contractors that were coming in for, we'll say, Vermont. And they would use that rule that says that they can work 3 days without having New Hampshire workers' comp. And they would outbid the sheet metal guys on jobs like at the hospitals and the colleges because they weren't covered with workers' comp. So project labor agreements are necessary. This bill doesn't just say that the government can't give out those contracts. It says anybody who takes the money from the government can't have a project labor agreement. I use them all the time. You've got my testimony in front of you, and I point out where I believe that my agreements would be a problem if this bill were passed. And let's face it, lawyers like to sue. And the last thing I need is to be sued on a job because I do the right. So, and I won't belabor the whole thing. You have it there. I'm asking that you put this into study so that when the buildings are open and we can all sit in a room and discuss, first off, what's the problem? As you heard today, there's no problem in the state of New Hampshire. This is just another attempt for some people to determine who can and who can't be a winner. And I don't think it's right. I'm a Republican. I voted for Republican, and I voted for smaller government. And I'm sorry to say that every time I do, the first thing that happens, the first bills that come out are bills that tell me how to run my business. No offense, I don't need any help. I've done well in 51 years. And every time you put another mandate and you tell me I can't do another thing, it just costs me more money. And the fact that I have project labor agreements, and I'm not union, I have project labor agreements that say you can't pay your immigrant worker $7.50 an hour when everybody else is getting 25. That puts me in jeopardy if this bill goes through. I make sure everything's done right, and I do it right the first time, not the second time. And I carry all the insurances. It's part of my labor agreements. I also allow guys to get together that don't have enough people. You could have 3 contractors bidding as one. That requires a project labor agreement of some sort. So all I'm asking you to do is put the bill into study. Let's sit down in a room. I'd love to hear what everybody's problem is. I've never had a problem bidding against the union. But maybe it's because I work the same way. I don't know. But I don't think you need this bill. And I think if you pass it, it's going to create more problems and allow more people to abuse their workers than anything else. It's not going to save money. The profits will go up for those who are allowed to not have project labor agreements, and the profits for the worker will go way down. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I see Senator Ricciardi has her hand up.
Mr. Clegg, thank you for your testimony. I don't know if you can answer this question, but as I've been listening, I've been wondering, I have an issue with E. I believe the language would contradict the federal Bacon-Davis Act. Do you know anything about that? Would I be accurate in that?
Well, I think you'd be accurate, and I think what it would do, it would prohibit the cities and towns and even the state from taking the federal money. Because if you take the federal money for many jobs, you have to follow the rules that come along with it. So we would lose money in the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Clegg.
Thank you.
Do we have any more folks, Patrick?
Two more.
Okay.
Next up is Joe Casey. If you could unmute yourself and announce yourself for the record, please.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak this morning. My name is Joe Casey. I'm from Rochester, and I'm a member of the IBEW, 38-year member of the IBEW. I worked in the state with the tools for 18 years, and I was the business manager of the electricians IBEW Local 490 for 15, and president of the New Hampshire Building Trades for, I don't know, a bunch of years. And I currently am a business development representative for the New England states for our international. And I was involved with the PLA that we talked about, that was mentioned, the federal PLA that was brought forward. First of all, I have supporting data that I actually emailed to Cameron, and I don't know if you received it. I'm having problems with being on here and sending emails at the same time. I guess I don't have the data. And but if you do receive it, please take a look at it after my testimony or what have you. It's very interesting. And I think to start off with the legalities of or whatnot and of a PLA, as far as procurement, the procurement policy for state-funded projects in New Hampshire. In order for a PLA to be implemented, you would have to change the procurement policy, and the state of New Hampshire would have to pass legislation in order for that to happen. And so at the state level, a PLA would have to be approved by the state legislature and go through the process. A city or town, a municipality, where there could be state and local spending, obviously they are in charge of their procurement, and they can make their own decision whether or not they want to use a PLA. And a federal PLA that comes from whatever department is funding the project. In the Job Corps situation, it was the Department of Labor, and they instituted a PLA for the project. Why they did that was because they did a study, they had an independent study done for states that they feel that they should use a PLA for. They had this company called Washington Group, which you will all get a copy of. And they did a study on construction in New Hampshire and made the determination basically that the state of New Hampshire, if there was any state that should use a PLA, it should be the state of New Hampshire, is basically how it came out. PLA was instituted, the jobs went out to bid. Under a PLA, no contractor is stopped or, not required or what have you to bid the project. Anybody can bid the project. A PLA simply is a working agreement that can be crafted any way that the owner wants it to be. It can include, apprentice ratios, safety, hours of start, so that everybody is starting at the same time, hours of finish, overtime rates, and what have you. Any federal project over $2,000 or $5,000 requires that the Davis-Bacon wages are paid, which is prevailing wages. That was the case in this, regardless if they had a PLA on the job, right? So the PLA was a document that had provisions, employee protections for the employees working on the job, and representation from the building trades in the local communities. And that was implemented. They are 100% correct. There was 3 bidders. There was a $6 million difference in the bidding. The job was won. The job was started. After a couple of months, the building trades pulled the payrolls to make sure that they were paying, the prevailing wages like they were supposed to be paying. And we found out that they weren't. And I investigated the, how can they circumvent the prevailing wages on the job? And after a lot of research, I finally was told that after the job had started, the contractor, the civil contractor who bid the project found out because of the geography of the area, there was too much granite, and they weren't going to be able to do the work under the terms of their agreement. And the federal Department of Labor allowed them to change their wage structure from building, which is a higher rate for their employees, to heavy, which is about an $8 difference in wages for the civil workers. So these civil workers who started at the Davis-Bacon building rates, once they were told by their employer that, under no fault of their own, they had to adjust their wages to make up the difference for the cost of the project. They gave them an $8 reduction in wages, right? So, and that was that was pretty much in par with why New Hampshire needs a PLA, right? So there was nobody there to represent those workers. They took the hit. Some of them quit, and some of them didn't. And that was the difference in the project. And it was a ton of civil work. And they allowed that to go with all the other trades. I contested the decision. And 2 years after the project was finished, as the federal government works, they made the decision that they had no right to change it. I went back to our contractors, our civil contractors, who did the geological study, and said that's exactly why we bid it the way we did, was because we knew we did study what we were in for. And that was the difference in the project. And at the end of the day, the workers got hurt, and a PLA would have been a great tool to have on that project. And that's exactly what it is. A PLA is a tool that can be used any way anybody wants to use it. If a municipality has a high school and their kids don't have any place to go to work, and they're building something in the town, and they want to sign a PLA with the local unions so that they can bring their kids into the apprenticeship program and start them off and start getting trained so they can have a career, they can do that, which is what happened up in Berlin. And it's a tool that can be used, and it can be, or it can't be used. And if the state legislature wanted to put a PLA on a project because of anything that they could come up with that they wanted to do, like, I don't know, bring people into the trades, or something to that effect, where they're actually working and making a living rather than the way we're doing it now by giving compensating contractors, training funds for these kids. It's just a switch, a bait and switch with government funding. So,
Mr. Casey, is there anything else that you really feel that the committee needs to hear?
yes, I do. Yes, I'd just like to finish up with.
Okay, because we have other people that would like to testify as well.
Right.
And we've gone way over our time limit.
All right.
Please,
I just want to say, the state of New Hampshire right now, as far as construction goes, is in big trouble. We're not bringing kids in. We're losing workers to other states around us, and that is our real problem. Not whether or not we're going to put in government mandates on funded projects. I oppose the bill. I hope you kill it. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casey. Are there any questions? Seeing Senator Reagan.
So Joe, are you saying that we now don't allow apprenticeship programs, or that this law would forbid apprenticeship programs? I'm a little confused by what you're saying.
I'm saying right now that this, under the way jobs are procured today, you can either have apprentices or not have apprentices. You don't have to, I'm not saying it forbids anything. But what I said was you could have local apprentices versus some apprentices coming up from North Carolina, like is what's happening on a lot of our solar projects. So if a city wanted to do that when they were funding a project saying we want to have 15 kids get into the apprenticeship program versus a company from South Dakota coming in with their apprentices, yes, that's what you could do with a PLA.
Okay, are there any further questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Casey.
Thank you.
Okay, Patrick, you said there's one more?
Yes, the last person I have identified as wanting to speak is Ron. If you could unmute and announce yourself for the committee. And if anyone else wants to speak, if you could raise your hand now, that would be great.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Ciotti. I am a resident of Bow, New Hampshire, and an attorney with Hinckley Allen in Manchester, New Hampshire. As an attorney, sometimes things get confused that I am not here as a lobbyist. I'm not here on behalf of any company or organization. I'm here as a New Hampshire taxpayer. But I'm also a bit of a different attorney. I am a construction attorney, and a construction attorney only. I only do construction. I only do commercial construction, and I do it here in New Hampshire and across the nation. But the vast majority of my work is here in my home state, where I've been a resident of for 29 years in New Hampshire. And I am also, I get a pretty good breadth of the industry because I am on the board. In fact, I've been told I'm the only person in history to be on the board of directors of the AGC, the ABC, and the New Hampshire Good Roads, the three largest construction associations in New Hampshire. And the interesting thing about that is that we have members in those three organizations who are both merit shop and union based. So I get to see a lot across the board, and I personally represent companies that are both merit shop and union based. And as a result of that, I come here today to speak in favor of Senate Bill 55. And the reason I do is because I think it's fair for both, which is very interesting for any bill in the construction industry that relates to this issue. But the fact of the matter is PLAs are unfair when it really comes down to it. And anybody can argue a political side of it, but the fact of the matter is that's all they are, is a political side. They're unfair because it gives the right for us to prejudice one side. And it's really interesting to me in today's day of free, open sort of, we're all about making sure everything is inclusive. We don't want to block any type of race, ethnic, creed, etc. But we still are able, under our laws right now, to block a merit shop contractor from bidding a job by making it a PLA. And so it becomes very interesting here. And so as a result of that, it's very easy for me, even though I represent both here in New Hampshire and abroad, contractors on both sides, it's very easy for me to vote in favor of this bill because of the fact that what I really think it is it's pro-New Hampshire. It allows New Hampshire and keeps it in New Hampshire to have to allow all of its members, all of its entities to have the right to bid a project instead of restricting it to a certain group. It doesn't say that unions can't bid the jobs. In fact, it says just the opposite, that both unions and merit shops should be able to bid every job. It doesn't stop apprenticeships. Any company can do whatever they want. They can be union or they can be merit shop. It doesn't tell you what a company needs to be. It doesn't tell a company that they can have apprenticeships or they have to have apprenticeships. It doesn't do any of that. It just allows New Hampshire to continue to keep its bedrock sort of motto of being a free state. And what I think the importance here is to understand that anytime you can keep this free, keep this open, you're going to get better bids, you're going to get a better opportunity, and you're going to get savings. It just makes sense. So from a New Hampshire businessman and a New Hampshire taxpayer, this makes sense to me. And that's why I'm here testifying. I'm not here, again, testifying on behalf of any specific organization, on behalf of any specific company. I'm here as a taxpayer because I know this area. I know construction, and I know this is good for New Hampshire. Now, a couple of things I just wanted to address was, it was brought up earlier that, well, there really isn't a lot of PLAs here in New Hampshire, so why do we need to bring this in? We need to bring this in to ensure that they're not brought in. It doesn't matter if it's a good bill, it's a good bill. It doesn't have to have an absolute specific instant reason. It's a good bill, and it maintains a proper way to bid projects. And so to me, that's why it's important to continue to pass this. The other thing I just wanted to clarify that was brought up earlier was whether subsection E on page 2 of the bill somehow blocks our ability to, or an entity's ability to utilize Davis-Bacon. No, it absolutely does not. And when you look at it, the language actually states it. Where is it? I'm trying to pull it up right now. I apologize. This section shall not, at the beginning of it, if you look up at page 2, line 7, that section starts off, this section shall not. And so when it says prohibit, it shall not prohibit that specific issue, prohibit a governmental agency from including other wage and benefit requirements. So a governmental agency can continue to include Davis-Bacon in their requirement for that project. It doesn't block that. It does just the opposite. It says it shall not prohibit a governmental agency from doing that. So this is a really good bill. It's really well written, and I really hope that that the Senate will look at this seriously and pass it. It's good for New Hampshire. And I want to thank you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity to speak, and I'll certainly open myself up for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else, Patrick?
That was everyone that I have.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 55. Okay, we are behind schedule, everyone, and I apologize. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing on Senate Bill 56 and recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Khan.
Senator, if you could unmute.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see Senate colleagues today. Thank you. Senate Bill 56 is addressing the statutes relative to reports by trustees of charitable trusts. And if you have, I'll just familiarize you with this section. It doesn't get a lot of looks. This section requires that any charitable organization with revenues, gains, or other support of $500,000 or more is required to file with the division a Internal Revenue Service Form 990 with the Attorney General, and shall submit the organization's latest financial statement prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's for organizations that have $500,000 of revenue gains and other support. It also then says that any charitable organization with revenue gains and other support of $1 million or more is required to file the IRS 990 an audited financial statement prepared in accordance with GAAP principles. So the floor for an audit is established at $1 million, and then we're silent on any other level above that. The preceding text to this says that periodic reports shall not unreasonably add to the expense of the administration of charitable trusts. So we can do the math fairly simply. According to New Hampshire not-for-profit auditors, it's costing not-for-profits about $15,000 a year to do audited financial statements. The audit itself then is adding to administrative overhead at a time when demand for not-for-profit charity is at an all-time high. This law was established in 2004 when $1 million was of value less than it is today. And it hasn't been revised in the last 17 years. $15,000 on a $1 million organization has a lot more impact than it would on a $5 million organization, for instance, where it would only be a 0.3% of their annual expense. But so the question before us, and that is proposed in this bill, is $1 million the right floor to set today? This bill proposes that the floor be lifted to $3 million to require an annual audit by a not-for-profit organization recognized in New Hampshire. There is nothing in this bill that would prohibit an organization from conducting an audit at its desire. There's nothing that would inhibit the Department of Justice from requesting an audit of a charitable organization. And any charitable organization that accepts grants from state or federal or even private foundations, which require annual audits, would at certain levels, if they accept that contract and they're required to do an audit, they'll need to do it as a condition of accepting the funds. If you're familiar with 990 forms, they contain the financial statements of organizations. And so that information is contained in what the not-for-profits are submitting to the Division of Charitable Trusts as well. So if you start asking around on this, you'll find that the not-for-profit community is very supportive of a review that would lift this to $3 million, that the auditors and the members of the New Hampshire CPA Society are also in favor of lifting this, that this is a burden that they think for $1 to $3 million organizations ought to be at their option. And then I consulted who many of us know, Terry Knowles, formerly of the Division of Charitable Trusts, and who I find is, you know, she's just a nationally recognized expert on charitable giving. And she too has advised that this, and you'll note that she's signed in. She had to leave the hearing earlier, so I doubt she's listening at this point. But again, I think you'll see that all of these parties will have signed in favor of lifting the floor on requiring an annual audit. The cost of it, you know, you can do the math pretty easily on this. There's 6,600 not-for-profits in the state of New Hampshire. There are only 437 of those that have revenues and other forms of funds that exceed $1 million a year. And to lift this to $3 million would affect only 100 organizations. But that 100 organizations spending $15,000 a year, you can do the math, and it's $1.5 million. That's the amount that very likely would enter the more purposeful outlays by those not-for-profit organizations were we to lift this floor from 1 million to 3 million. I believe that signed in to testify is Mr. Tom Donovan, the director of the Division of Charitable Giving. And I'd recommend, Madam Chair, that he be recognized so that the committee can hear that side of that perspective on this, and then hear as well from others who are in support. So with that, Madam Chair, I would conclude my testimony merely by saying that the time has never been more urgent for our nonprofit organizations to step up and support their communities at levels that we've never seen the need before. And ultimately, I yield to the committee to determine if now is the time to lift that floor for requiring the annual audit in the information that's submitted to the Division of Charitable Trusts.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Senator. Are there any questions from the committee? I see Senator Kavanaugh has his hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator. I'm just curious if they're going to speak. I'm just kind of curious of the position of the Division of Charitable Trust now. If they're going to speak, I don't mind waiting, but I didn't know if you had that information or.
Yeah, I think Mr. Donovan is present. I think
Okay.
it'd be best to hear from him. It's, next
Okay.
if you can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Senator. Next, we have Tom Donovan.
Okay, Tom, if you could unmute and identify yourself for the committee, please.
Hi, I'm Tom Donovan. I'm the Director of Charitable Trusts at the Attorney General's Office. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
The Attorney General's Office does not often take a formal position on bills. We feel that policy matters are properly within the discretion of the legislative branch. But this bill affects our regulatory responsibility. The Charitable Trust Unit is a part of the Attorney General's Office, and we have a specific regulatory function. So we are taking a position on this bill, and we oppose it. I submitted a written fact sheet, Cameron, yesterday. I don't know if it has been distributed to the senators.
Yes, we have it.
You have it, and okay,
Yes.
Thank you. And I don't know if there's a way to publish it on the Zoom screen, or if that's not done, or if you'd rather not.
Yeah, I would rather not. It is a part of the packet, and so it will be available to members of the public if they would like to see it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So the Charitable Trust Unit has a mission to protect the assets and organizations devoted to charitable purposes in the state of New Hampshire. We're the first charities bureau in the nation, established in 1943, and we take a lot of pride in our effort. We're recognized as a very strong charities bureau, and we like to think we're the best small state charities bureau in the nation. And we require annual reports. It's in the statute every year from our charities. We have 11,300 that do business in the state. 5,600 of them are New Hampshire based, and those are the ones I want to talk about today. We have somebody review the annual reports that come in, specifically the financial reports. And as Senator Khan mentioned, the statute now requires that charities with revenue of more than $1 million a year file with their annual report and audited financial statements. And that's been the law in New Hampshire since 2004. I checked what our sister states require in terms of charity audits, and there are about 22 states around the nation that do require audits to be filed. And the average floor is revenues of about $500,000 a year. Our nearest states that require that, Massachusetts and Connecticut, each have a $500,000 per year floor. New Hampshire, again, is $1 million. Georgia is $1 million. The highest floor that I could find in my review of state laws is California, and they have a $2 million floor. There is no state that I could find that has a floor requiring audits of more than $2 million. I've spoken with Senator Khan a couple of times about this bill. It's something that he's concerned about, and we've had respectful conversations about it back and forth. And he's right. This audit requirement came in 2004, and I checked the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, and $1 million in 2004 is now worth $1,375,000 today. That's $1,375,000. So inflation hasn't been, compared to past decades, not so bad. So why do we require audits? First of all, we think they're important for the boards of directors. Boards need audits to help them with their governance responsibilities. It's an outside review of the financials that is apart from management. We want our boards of directors to be active. We want the auditor to meet separately with the boards of directors and tell them if there are any material weaknesses in the financial controls, and you get that through audits. There are also extensive notes that audits provide on endowments, and a part of our mission is to protect endowments that donors have made to keep in perpetuity in the organization with income only to be used to benefit the charity. We need to protect those, and audits are the best way for us to oversee that. We think it's an important part of our job. The statute gives us limited discretion, and we use it regularly. We have been very proactive in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and working with charities. We've worked with them in terms of allowing remote meetings, Zoom meetings, et cetera. In terms of the audit requirement, sometimes a charity may get a big gift or a bequest that bumps them up over the $1 million threshold. We can give them a waiver so that they don't have to file an audit if that kind of circumstance applies. But we think that the $1 million level is the right amount. We're not out of line with other states, and it helps us with our enforcement responsibilities. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Senator,
you're muted.
Sorry, my cat was walking around meowing. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Donovan. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much again for your testimony. The chair will call Kathleen Reardon.
Kathleen, if you happen to be identified as New Hampshire Nonprofits host, could you go ahead and raise your hand for me? I don't see you otherwise on the list. Thank you. If you could just unmute and identify yourself for the record, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Kathleen Reardon. I am the CEO of the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits. The center, as many of you may know, is a statewide nonprofit organization that seeks to strengthen and give voice to the nonprofit sector. We have more than 700 members currently, and I'm pleased to be here to share my perspective and support for Senate Bill 56. The New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits provides a real comprehensive array of services and programs to help nonprofits, board and staff leaders manage their duties to have wise stewardship of their resources, strong financial management, compliance, and accountability. In fact, we often work very closely with the Office of Charitable Trust Unit, and Tom actually is one of the people that's going to be speaking tomorrow on staying legal. So these compliance matters are important to us and our members, and they take them very seriously. But it's with that perspective that we want to just provide our support for endorsing the proposal before you. As Mr. Donovan relayed, it's important to note that nonprofits of all sizes report to the Charitable Trust Unit. And, you know, as organizations as small as those that have $50,000 of revenue file 990 reports with the IRS that have a level of transparency and accountability within them. In addition, many have other reporting requirements due to contracts and grants, et cetera. So this accountability and transparency is very important to the sector, and there are a lot of other ways that they are doing that. I think the biggest, most compelling reason to look at this threshold is, again, thinking about the significant cost, even for very small nonprofit organizations. The audit can exceed $10,000, $15,000 in cost. It's not a one size fits all, of course. The cost of the audit depends on the complexity of the organization, its finances, the number of kinds of sources of revenue, et cetera. And while the charitable trust does have a waiver exception, many nonprofits are really wired for compliance. And so oftentimes they don't know that there is that exception rule. And they're likely just to choose an audit if they hit over that $1 million, which could adversely impact being able to put that funding into missions. It is paying for an audit is part of what many people consider overhead, which is extremely challenging to raise funds for. So nonprofits are really, this is an opportunity, I think, to modernize our approach while continuing to ensure that nonprofits will continue to report to the Charitable Trust Unit at all sizes as well. As noted, this is an incredibly challenging time for our communities, and nonprofits have been on the forefront. So any relief that we can give them at this time would be deeply appreciated. So thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Ms. Reardon. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Patrick, that's all I have on my list. Are there any additional folks who would like to speak?
No, if there's anyone else on the list right now, if you could raise your hand to speak to Senate Bill 56. I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand.
Hey, I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing on Senate Bill 56. Okay, is Senator Reagan still with us? Okay, because I have the next two bills. So I'm going to start off by opening the, well, I can't. Senator Kavanaugh, would you open Senate Bill 57?
Sure. I'd like to open this public hearing on Senate Bill 57 and welcome the prime sponsor, Senator Carson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This morning, for the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, which comprises the towns of Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. And I have this morning for your consideration Senate Bill 57, which seeks to allow pharmacy technicians and interns to remotely perform non-dispensing tasks. Excuse me. This legislation was codified in Emergency Order Number 13, which went into effect in March. I was approached to introduce this this legislation by PillPack, which is a New Hampshire-based pharmacy that has sought to make this remote practice permanent through a waiver to the Board of Pharmacy. However, the board responded that they did not have clear statutory authority to do so and recommended that PillPack contact a state legislator to introduce legislation. You will hear testimony today about how the work from home program has shown positive trends in employment, employee satisfaction, productivity, and very important patient safety. Passing this legislation will help to ensure that these opportunities can continue after the state of emergency ends. Codifying this emergency order now will also allow the Board of Pharmacy ample time to create any rules needed to address technical details without disrupting the flow work of pharmacies utilizing remote pharmacy technicians. Bottom line is that it's good for consumers, good for employees, and good for business. I know that stakeholders are working on a potential clarification amendment, and I'm going to ask the bill to hold ask the committee to hold the bill for at least a week so they can continue to do that work. So this morning, I thank you all for your consideration and ask you to pass Senate Bill 57. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, I'll hand the gavel back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Kavanaugh, for stepping in. The next person that I have on the list is Robert Stout.
If you could unmute and identify yourself for the committee, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chairman. It's nice to see you again and senators on the committee. My name is Bob Stout. I'm a resident down in Candia, practicing pharmacist for 45 years. Former board member on the Board of Pharmacy and president for 2 years, and currently the president of the New Hampshire Pharmacists Association. So I'm here today to testify against the bill and in opposition of the bill as currently worded. I would actually argue that there is nothing in our laws or rules that prohibits this practice from going on right now. Pharmacists have been remoting in from different practice sites for the last 20 years. We had discussions on this when I was on the board, and we talked a lot about what the definition of remote is. And I'll just mention that Webster says that being or related to or involving a means of doing or using something indirectly or from a distance, such as using or involving a network connection between computers or systems in different locations or files stored on a remote server. So I would tell you, if remote access is not allowed under current law, you'd have to close every community pharmacy in New Hampshire because they all use remote servers to process any kind of prescriptions. Pharmacy technicians today can currently remote into another store as long as they're located in a store. So I think the crux of the bill, Madam Chairman, is the whole idea around the word remote and what that means for our practice settings. I submitted some written testimony that talks about a lot of the confusion in the current wording of the bill. And I would argue that every one of those practice licenses that you see, whether registered technician, certified technician, pharmacy intern, licensed advanced pharmacy intern, their duties and scope of practice are very specific and spelled out in those particular rules. Where I would differ with this board and in their judgment to, and I talked to Chris Ruchon for about an hour yesterday about his back and forth with the board, is that when I read the rulemaking authority that the board has been granted by the legislature, it says procedures for the use, documentation, security, maintenance, and monitoring of automated pharmacy systems. With that rulemaking authority, they developed a set of rules. They're 70304, and I did copy the senators on that so they could see it. Mm-hmm. You look at the language in those current rules, it talks about system security, and it talks about individual access codes unique to each location. So the interpretation in the past has always been, well, we meet the security requirements. They have unique logins. They're working within their scope of practice. There's the board could not cite me violating a statute or rule currently if I was performing these duties. And I have to tell you, Senator, when I was at Northeast Pharmacy Services, we used this particular service because we had a lot of after hours work with the long-term care facilities. So again, I understand the situation right now after talking with Chris yesterday and the pushback he's had from the board. So I would just say that I believe this could just be addressed and ruled by addressing 70304 and just putting some language in there about remote practice. If you do decide to do a legislative correction for this, I would like to see it specifically just talk about a definition for what remote access is and stay away from trying to define what each one of those license classes can do, because they may come into conflict with the existing rules. And then as we know this year, as the sites and our practice continues to evolve and change, keeping it open-ended and keeping most of it in rules would allow for much more flexibility. We wouldn't have to keep coming back to you for new access. So I certainly agree with you in that remote access is critical for patient care. I just disagree with the way this bill is worded and actually the need for it at all. And I know your time, you're running behind, so I will just limit my comments to that. I know there are some amendments. I have seen some language circulating around, which I think certainly are better than this bill here. And I'll leave my testimony at that and just be available for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Stout. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Prentice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stout, for your testimony. And I did get an opportunity to see your letter. So I have one question to start, and this may end up getting resolved outside of here, but supervision, the way supervision is defined in the current version, should the language for individual be specific for what licensed individual should be providing the supervision, like a pharmacist?
Yeah, okay, so yeah, so there is a definition, and I know the board originally, in a response to PillPack, cited that word supervision, and about the direct piece, but it also said that unless accepted by board rules. I don't have the wording right in front of me, but if you go to the 800 rules regarding certified pharmacy technicians who have been trained to do data entry, right in the rules, that's an exception. It says that a certified pharmacy technician may do data entry of prescriptions unsupervised. So even in today's market, they're working within their scope of practice. They do not need direct supervision to do data entry prescriptions even today, because it's been accepted out in the 800 rules. So okay. I don't think the supervision language is the issue, Senator. I think we're getting back to, well, it doesn't say we can do remote, therefore you can't. And I would make the case that it doesn't say we can do remote. I think we can, because we meet the requirements of the automated pharmacy systems and individual licensees working within their scope of practice.
Okay, are there any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Stout.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, the chair will call Chris Robichon.
If you could just unmute and announce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Chris Rochon and I represent PillPack. PillPack is a full-service pharmacy that offers patients a safe and innovative way to obtain prescriptions using convenient packaging, modern technology, and personalized service. We were founded right here in New Hampshire by a second-generation pharmacist, and today PillPack is licensed nationwide and is an independently operated subsidiary of Amazon. Our Manchester, New Hampshire facility employs more than 500 full-time New Hampshire workers and processes more than 100,000 prescriptions each month for patients across the country. We are here to provide support for Senate Bill 57. This bill would allow pharmacy technicians and interns to continue to perform non-dispensing tasks, such as data entry and prescription transfers, remotely, even after the COVID-19 state of emergency ends. We would like to thank Senator Carson for sponsoring this legislation. We would also like to thank Governor Sununu and the Board of Pharmacy for their leadership on this issue last March, when they approved this practice during an emergency meeting and through emergency order number 13. These emergency actions allowed PillPack to continue to process and deliver critical medications to patients in their homes, while maximizing the number of PillPack employees who could work safely from their own homes. Now, let me be clear. Pharmacy technicians and interns are and should be supervised by licensed pharmacists. Technology makes remote supervision not only possible, but also safe and effective. This is why, even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, 11 states had allowed pharmacy technicians to perform certain tasks from home under remote pharmacist supervision. This practice has expanded significantly during the pandemic, with 34 states, including New Hampshire, currently allowing some form of remote work for pharmacy technicians. As far as we are aware, the expansion of remote supervision has been safely implemented across the country, as well as right here in New Hampshire. The National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, NABP, developed remote work model language for pharmacy technicians, which Senate Bill 57 reflects. Since implementing the remote work program, we've seen positive trends in employee job satisfaction, productivity, and prescription accuracy. All technicians and interns continue to be supervised by licensed pharmacists, and have access to their supervisors by email, by phone, and by secure instant message chat, including video screen share, for support and guidance as needed, which is consistent with PillPac's existing operations. We've seen a sustained increase in job satisfaction, and our quality data has remained very strong throughout the remote work period. We are continuously monitoring these important metrics to ensure that we are meeting or exceeding our strict patient safety standards. Additionally, our remote work program has also allowed PillPac to hire additional technicians from different parts of the state, many of whom are specifically seeking remote work. PillPac is continuing to grow, and we plan to increase our workforce in New Hampshire. Senate Bill 57 will provide us and other pharmacies the certainty that our remote work program can continue after the state of emergency concludes. This will allow us to continue to grow and hire in New Hampshire, where we process and fulfill orders for customers across the country. We previously sought a waiver from the New Hampshire Board of Pharmacy to make remote work permanent. That request was denied by the board, not on substance, but because the board did not believe it had sufficiently clear statutory authority to grant the waiver. In its denial, the board recommended that PillPac and other interested parties pursue legislation that would provide the necessary statutory authority. As a result, we are testifying before you today to ask for your support to allow pharmacy technicians and interns to continue to perform non-dispensing tasks remotely. Codifying this practice would create much needed business certainty for pharmacies in this state and for our patients across the country. Thank you again for considering this important piece of legislation during these unprecedented times, and I urge you to vote Senate Bill 57 ought to pass.
Senator Carson, you're muted again.
Sorry. Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Rochon. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you again for your testimony this morning. Patrick, are there any other folks that would like to testify?
I don't have anyone raising their hand. If anyone's interested in testifying, could you please raise your hand now? I don't see anyone doing that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on Senate Bill 57. Okay, we have one more, and again, because it's mine, I will be handing the gavel to Senator Reagan so that I can introduce the bill.
Okay, we'll hear from the sponsor of Senate Bill 58, which is made at the request of the Office of Professional Licensing and Certification, Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee members. For the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, comprising the towns of Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. And I have for you this morning for your consideration, Senate Bill 58, which seeks to make statutory provisions concerning the regulatory boards and commissions for technical professions and health professions in order to conform to oversight and administration by the Office of Professional Licensure and Regulation. This bill is a refile from last year, and I will work with Mr. Lapine to make sure that you folks get a copy of that hearing report if it's not already on OneDrive. But this bill was originally filed last year by Senator Gaida. And this year, what we've decided to do is we separated the bill. I have the policy section, he has the fiscal section. So what you have in front of you here today is the policy section, and it is pretty extensive. So we will not be executing this anytime soon because I want to make sure that our new members have time to go through the bill and to be able to ask questions of the department. I will let you folks know that I did receive a request from the Electricians Board concerning criminal background checks, and there will be an amendment coming forward that will be attached to this bill. So I've got to work with Mr. Lapine to get that amendment ready. And when it happens, you folks will get a copy of it way ahead of time. So that way you can read it and make sure that you understand it, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of the electricians board if you so wish to do so. So at this point, I am going to conclude my testimony. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to introduce the legislation. Are there any questions? Senator Kavanaugh?
Nope, I'm sorry. Someone was walking by the front of the house and I just waved to him. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, that happens. Okay. Okay, thank you all very much. Next, we are going to call David Conway.
I do also have Senator Gaida raising his hand.
Okay, all right. I don't have him on the list, so I will call Senator Gaida.
Okay, Senator Gaida, if you could just unmute.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'll be very brief. This is a much needed bill. OPLC, as you know, in its history, has been stymied by changes of directors, problems with boards working together, and so forth. The purpose of OPLC can't be accomplished without this bill. And I'm speaking frankly in support. Senate District 2 is what I represent. And ask the board, committee to please pass this legislation with any appropriate amendments that may be required. Without it, OPLC is fairly well hamstrung. And right now, under the direction of Executive Director Lindsey Courtney, who's doing an outstanding job trying to get everything together to make it function as it should. I'll take any questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Senator. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will call Mr. Conway.
Okay, Mr. Conway, if you could just unmute and introduce yourself for the record, please.
I'm sorry, I'm Dr. David Conway. I'm president of the Board of Medicine. I had planned to testify today, and I thought I had canceled that request last night because I planned not to testify today. Because the board has not had a chance to consider the bill. We're not meeting until next week.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being present this morning. We appreciate that. Okay, next I will call Lindsey Courtney.
Okay, if you could just unmute and introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lindsey Courtney, Executive Director of the New Hampshire Office of Professional Licensure and Certification, which, as you know, is the agency that oversees the administration of 54 licensing boards, councils, and commissions within the state. OPLC fully supports SB 58, and I wish to thank Senator Carson for bringing this bill forward. Over the last year, we've been working diligently in the office to establish efficiencies in order to assist the licensing boards in their very important work. SB 58 is a cleanup bill, and as such is a crucial step to pave the way for OPLC to achieve its mission of promoting the efficiency and economy in the administration of its licensing boards. It's a very long bill. Essentially, the primary objectives of the bill are to one, remove the requirement in certain practice acts that require a court stenographer to be present at all hearings. Two, to grant the executive director the authority to set per diem rates for board members. Three, standardize the quorum requirements. Four, repeal RSA 332H. Five, add the Board of Veterinary Medicine to our practice or our statute, which is 310A. Six, remove references to the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services. Seven, remove the requirement in certain practice acts that boards provide a roster of licensees for a fee. Eight, permit OPLC to adopt a retention policy across the agency. 9, clarify that OPLC does not have reporting requirements under RSA 332G for boards that do not fall within our agency. 10, grant the executive director the authority to promulgate rules for all boards participating in our professionals health program. 11, set term limits for the Board of Family Mediator certification, and 12, clarify that the executive director, not the PD&P program administrator, has certain authority over discretionary tasks. I want to be clear that the boards, councils, and commissions within the agency have their own independent regulatory authority to establish standards for their respective professions. The agency fully supports that. SB 58 does not propose to change any standards or the board's authority to set such standards, but there are certain administrative functions unrelated to the standards of practice that must be standardized for all boards within OPLC in order for it to function effectively. That was the primary purpose in establishing the agency, and SB 58 would assist to effectuate this intent by granting the agency the ability to streamline certain administrative functions across all boards. So in terms of the stenographer requirement, a few practice acts require that a stenographer be present at a hearing, while the large majority of practice acts permit hearings to be recorded. This can be very expensive. To standardize the requirement across all boards and reduce the cost to the agency, we are proposing to eliminate the requirement that a stenographer be present. All boards would simply have to comply with the Administrative Procedures Act and would be required to record hearings, which could be transcribed. If parties wished to pay for a stenographer, they of course could request a stenographer and pay for the stenographer. Per diem, SB 58 proposes to grant the agency the authority to establish per diem rates for all boards, councils, and commissions within OPLC. At present, some boards receive a per diem rate and others do not. Some boards receive a per diem for any work performed. Others are required to perform work for a certain number of hours, or alternatively only receive per diems for board members, for board meetings, as opposed to other board tasks. Some receive a rate of $25, others receive a rate of $100. Essentially, this bill would allow us to standardize the per diem rates as a matter of fundamental fairness. Additionally, it's extremely difficult for us to budget each year, not knowing what we have to pay for and having a standardized rate for a per diem. So this would effectively allow us to budget for per diem rates. We'd like to standardize quorum requirements. Most practice acts establish a quorum of the majority of members appointed and confirmed by governor and council. However, some practice acts define a set number of board members who constitute a quorum. This can become a problem when vacancies are not filled, as boards are sometimes unable to meet, and that delays the business of the board, including licensing of folks. As an example, up until most recently, the Board of Hearing Care Providers did not have a quorum, and so licenses were being approved by operation of law after 60 days, regardless of whether individuals met the requirements for licensure. That obviously is not really in line with public safety. SB 58 proposes to change those practice acts, establishing a specific quorum number to make a quorum the majority of those members appointed to serve on the board. We'd like to repeal RSA 332H, which requires boards to distribute printed rules to licensees. This statutory provision is outdated and unnecessary, given that rules are readily available on our website. I would like to note that we're currently revising our website, should be live on February 15th, and all rules will link to the GenCourt website. And to be frank, boards are not complying with this statutory requirement at present, so SB 58 proposes to eliminate this requirement. We'd like to add the Board of Veterinary Medicine to our statute, RSA 310A. This was a change that was in HB4 that brought the Board of Veterinary Medicine over from agriculture, and we just need to clarify in our statute that it's within the agency. SB 58 proposes to remove references to the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services. Like many boards within OPLC, the Midwifery Council used to be part of DHHS. The Practice Act still contains references to the Commissioner of that department, and so we'd like to propose to eliminate such references. SB 58 also eliminates the requirements of providing a roster. We are required by statute, several practice acts, to provide a roster of licensees and to do so at a set cost. However, our rosters are online, newhampshirelicenses.nh.gov. Additionally, this information should be available at no cost pursuant to RSA 91A, and so we'd like to eliminate this requirement. SB 58 also proposes to allow us to adopt adopt a retention policy. So some of our practice acts establish a time frame in which certain documents must be retained, like licensure documents or disciplinary documents. Some boards have already worked with the Secretary of State's office to adopt a retention policy, but the retention policy varies. This has really posed a problem for the agency, particularly given its recent physical relocation. Essentially, we do not have the ability to store indefinitely all paper files. And so we'd like to propose to permit OPLC to adopt a retention policy so that documents are stored in a like manner across the agency and for the same time frame as permitted by the Secretary of State. This bill proposes to clarify that OPLC does not have a reporting requirement for non-OPLC boards. So RSA 332G, as you know, applies to all Title 30 boards, but not all boards within OPLC are Title 30 boards, and not all Title 30 boards are within OPLC. Yet RSA 332G13 and 332G14 appear to require the agency to report certain information and issue temporary licenses for all Title 30 boards, including non-OPLC boards. SB 58 proposes to make clear that OPLC's authority extends only to the boards that fall within the agency. OPLC presently contracts with the Professional Health Program on behalf of 13 boards within the agency. We recently revised this contract. It was previously five boards that we were contracting on behalf. But although the contract is between OPLC and the PHP, the boards have the ability to adopt rules relative to the Professional Health Program. The rules are not the same across all the boards, which poses a problem for the vendor. SB 58 proposes to permit OPLC to promulgate one set of rules for all boards that participate in the Professional Health Program. This, of course, would ensure the process is efficient and permit OPLC to add additional boards to the contract if desired. Finally, we'd like to clarify the Executive Director's authority for PD&P. RSA 318B35 appears to grant certain discretionary authority to a state classified employee as opposed to the Executive Director. Generally, statutes grant discretionary authority to a department head, which may then be delegated to staff. And to be consistent with this practice, SB 58 proposes to make clear that the Executive Director has certain statutory authority. As mentioned, we believe these changes are vital to OPLC's ability to function effectively as an agency. We are working diligently in order to implement changes throughout the agency to streamline our practices, policies in order to assist the boards. But SB 58 is a crucial part of that. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Oops. Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Ms. Courtney. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to call James Potter.
Okay, if you could just unmute and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is James Potter. I'm the Executive Vice President and CEO of the New Hampshire Medical Society. We testify today in full support of Senate Bill 58. We do so because it makes a series of what we think are common sense moves to consistently allow OPLC to exercise its authority in a consistent and standardized manner. As mentioned by Executive Director Lindsey Courtney, one of the specific examples has to do with a provision that the Senate passed late last year on House Bill 1520, which had to do with a designated non-lapsing fund for the New Hampshire Professionals Health Program. If this measure isn't passed, then essentially it gets that bill. And the reason you need that in place for, as Executive Director Courtney explained, is the rules vary by boards. The program is established, it's working very well. You need it now more than ever because of the pandemic and the increase of those going into the program. The stress levels because of the pandemic are at record highs. Without this legislation, then rules 1 can't be promulgated in a consistent means for current and future. And 2, they could not, right now the fees range from $30 from one board to $0 for the largest board that's currently under the program. So there's a lot of inequities. By improving this, then we think that the executive director can apply a equitable fee, probably about $10 across all boards. So that's a specific example where we think that these common sense changes are long overdue, as Senator Godden mentioned, and we urge you to adopt this measure. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony this morning, Mr. Potter. Are there questions for the committee? Okay, seeing none. Again, thank you for your testimony. The chair will call Paula Minahan.
Okay, Paula, if you could just unmute and introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. I had a little issue yesterday. Just wanted to double check. Thank you. And members of the committee, for the record, my name is Paula Minahan, Senior Vice President, State Government Relations with the New Hampshire Hospital Association, representing all our hospitals in the state. We are in strong support of Senate Bill 58, and Executive Director Courtney did a great job outlining the bill. So I just wanted to mention that the hospitals and the association work with many of the clinical licensing boards that fall under the authority of OPLC, and we do support the goals that she outlined and the changes made to ensure that reducing administrative complexities and ensuring consistency among the various boards is really, we're in line with, we completely agree with that and believe that it still allows the boards to do the important work that they do to oversee that the professionals that are being licensed are qualified and to practice in our state. So we just wanted to voice our strong support and urge you to support this bill, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Minahan. Are there any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Patrick, that's all I have who have signed up. Are there any folks in the waiting room?
If there's anyone in the waiting room who would like to testify, please raise your hand now. Or press *9 to unmute or to raise your hand on a phone. I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand.
Okay, so I am going to go ahead and close the public hearing on Senate Bill 58. Okay, we have had a lot of testimony on a variety of interesting subjects here today. I don't think anything is ready for us to exec at this point. So is there any further business to come in front of the committee this morning? Okay, seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn. Senator Prentice moves to adjourn. Senator Ricciardi seconds. I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Senator Ricciardi?
Senator Ricciardi, yes.
Senator Prentice?
Prentice, yes.
Senator Reagan?
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh?
Yes.
And Senator Carson, yes. Thank you all for your work this morning, and we will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Carson.